Welcome to the Open Forum in the Villages, Florida podcast. In this show, we talk to leaders in the community, leaders of clubs, and interesting folks who live here in the Villages to get perspectives of what is happening here in the Villages, Florida. We are a listener-supported podcast. There will be shout-outs for supporters in episodes. In Season 6, we will continue making substantial improvements to the podcast.
This is Mike Roth. And listeners, I'm thrilled to share with you this podcast, which is my passion project for you. This podcast brings me joy, brings you knowledge, inspiration, and a lot of things that people need to know about the villages and the people living here. Be sure to hit the follow button to get the newest episode each week. Creating this podcast is a labor of love, even though it demands more time than I can easily spare. Now, here's where you come in. You can help us keep the podcast alive and thriving. How? By becoming a supporter. The easy way for you to support us is to visit our podcast webpage, openforuminthevillagesflorida.com, and click on the supporter button at the top of the page, or the purple supporter box on the right side of the page. Even a small donation of $3 to $10 a month makes a big difference. And guess what? You can cancel your subscription at any time. No strings attached. Your support means the world to us. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep those headphones on. I hope everyone enjoys today's show. This is Mike Roth on Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. I'm here today with Jeanne Rogers. Thanks for joining me, Jeanne.
Thank you for having me.
Jeanne is an author, okay? And she's got a varied background. She grew up in New Jersey, was educated in Connecticut, and studied European history with a concentration on the French Revolution. I bet that was something that was going to earn you a lot of money.
It was certainly going to be at me. Yes, absolutely. But what it really did was it ended up having people say to me, what you can do, Jeanne, is you can hang a shingle outside your house that says historian. I said, that and a dime will get me a cup of coffee. What else?
So you didn't continue down that path.
No, because I didn't want to teach it. So there weren't many options.
In your career, you were involved with patent law.
Correct. Absolutely.
And how'd you get involved with patent law?
I first started by working with an attorney, and that particular attorney didn't want to pay me enough money. So I applied to a larger corporation where I would get better benefits. I was a single mom. I needed the benefits. And lo and behold, an opportunity came up in their patent department, and I was offered a position and took it.
Okay.
Yeah. I became an expert at filing international applications as well as U.S. applications.
That's good. Of course, in some countries, our patents don't seem to make any sense.
No, China doesn't care about our patents.
They just steal everything.
They just steal everything.
Okay. And you moved down to the Villages about how many years ago?
With 6 years in June, that would be here.
Okay. And you're down in the Vinny.
Correct.
Okay. And when did you actually start writing?
I'd say about 15, 20 years ago.
15 or 20 years ago?
Yep.
What was your first book?
My first book was entitled The Sword of Demelza.
Oh, okay. That's a strange name.
It is. Demelza. Demelza is a hill. It's an old word that describes a hill. Basically, what I wanted was something that sounded a fortress, so to speak.
Okay. And then you wrote some books about American history.
No, I didn't write any books about American history. I became an expert on Abraham Lincoln. I was a historian in college.
Okay.
And when I got out of college, of course, I didn't want to teach history, but I was really immersed in it, and particularly became immersed from the French Revolution. I went to American history and became really involved in Civil War. Abraham Lincoln in particular, I have over 100 books on Lincoln, some of them written by his contemporaries. I have a book that was published back in 1809.
Now, what inspired you to write?
I think if I had to come up with an answer for you, it's because I wanted to teach children about the environment via story. So all of my stories have some kind of a tone to teach children about endangered animals, and those animals are actually characters in the book. So I wanted, in order to get children involved in something like that, it has to be something that's interesting. So you have to give a story, has to be good first.
Mm.
I wanted to create a really great adventure, while at the same time, the characters in those books are endangered or threatened animals, and teaching about those animals and, why are they endangered? Probably because man is encroaching on their territory. That's usually the reason.
Now, are all the books children's books?
They are. They are.
Okay. And coming out of the history major, what made you so interested in writing books that included animals?
Yeah, they're really two very separate things. The love of animals started way before the history binge. When I was a kid, I had a mom that was extremely tolerant of me. I would go out and I'd bring salamanders home and, some critters, and she would be perfectly happy with that. Once I brought a snake home and I kept it in the house in a terrarium and I fed it, and she accepted that. She accepted the 3 white mice that got loose and got into my sister's bed while she was on the phone with her boyfriend. That was interesting.
I thought you were going to say the snake ate the mice.
No, the snake I actually let go afterwards. I had him for a while, but I did let him loose.
What kind of snake was it?
It was called a DK snake, just a typical garden snake that you'd find. And then I also had an iguana, a 4-foot-long iguana. From head to toe, he was 4 feet. And my mother allowed him in the house, and he was interesting because he kept breaking out of the terrarium. He kept lifting the screen on the top and breaking out. So I used to come home from college real quick and scan around the house looking for him before my mother found him. But a lot of times she found him, and I could tell where she was located by the screech.
Now, a lot of your books involve animals that are native to Australia.
Correct.
Why did you pick animals from Australia?
Okay, because as a kid, I knew a lot about fox and wolf, typical North American animals, skunks, possums, you name it. But I was fascinated with kangaroos and koalas, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, they don't teach anything about that. Why don't they teach about those animals? Why don't I learn a little bit about nature at school? They don't teach it. So I decided that I was going to focus there because there was a need.
Did you go to Australia to learn about the animals?
I did. In between the first book and the second book, I actually got to Australia. I got to see the animals in person that I was writing about, which was really enlightening. I went to a couple of reserves where they were taking care of them. Australians are very proud of their nature, of their environment, which is obviously different than the rest of the world for so many reasons. And they are proud. They have some animals that have been introduced that actually threaten the natural species, and they have done quite a bit to protect the natural species there and on the continent. Yeah.
Are there any particular animals native to Australia that you particularly like to write about?
I've used, you name it, I've used it in my stories, but I think if I had to pick one that was my favorite, it would be either the quoll or the quokka. And if you look up...
Quoll is not a koala bear.
No, a koala is another thing. A quoll, Quoll, is it looks like a large rat. It's brown and spotted, but it's really cute. It's not like a rat because rats really aren't cute. And then there's the quokka, which is Quokka. The quokka is considered the happiest animal on the planet because it always looks like it's smiling. So if you Google some images of quokka, you'll understand what I'm talking about.
I've been to Australia a couple of times, and one of the times we had a lady who was, as part of a group tour, very active with the Cincinnati Zoo. So part of our tour was a backstage tour of the Sydney Zoo, and that was really neat.
I would have loved that.
Yeah.
Did not get to the Sydney Zoo.
Yeah. Beautiful place.
I'm sure.
Yes. And we got to hang out with the koalas and stuff. Okay. Now, how do you go about weaving these Australian animals that North American kids aren't used to seeing into your stories?
What I do is I'll do an intro that will explain that these animals are unusual and that I'm offering them to the kids to use their imagination by the descriptions on how they think these animals just might look. But then I do tell them that at the back of the book is a glossary, and the glossary gives them photographs of what the actual animals look like, what their imagination doesn't give them in terms of reality. the glossary will fill in the blanks for them.
Mm-hmm. And how do you go about reaching younger readers with your books?
When I was in Connecticut, it was a great experience. Really easy thing to do because I was discovered by a lot of the schools and the libraries. And I was actually invited to schools. We would have gymnasiums filled with little ones sitting on the floor. And I had a wonderful presentations on Australia, explained to the children why Australia's life forms are so different. Yeah, we got into Gondwana land and Pangaea and the whole 9 yards. And I had pictures so that they could understand how this hunk of land like floated away from the rest. And so their life forms just developed totally, completely differently than the rest of the world. And they ate it up. They loved it. At those presentations, I would sell books. The kids would want those books. The parents would want the kids to have those books. So it was easier there. And I loved that.
Okay. And when you came here to the villages, what happened when you talked to the school principals about setting up a program like that?
I did not speak to the school principals.
Oh, because you didn't want to sell more books.
No, because I'm an introvert and I can't go into schools and speak to people like that. It just doesn't happen.
How many children's books now have you written?
5. And there's a 6th one coming out. I'm hoping before the end of the year, but we'll see. Not
Okay.
sure yet.
Before the show, you gave me a copy of Dressing for Dreamtime. This was an award-winning book. Tell our listeners about that.
Yeah, the Florida Writers Association awarded it a gold medal in children's literature and also gave it Children's Book of the Year. I was so honored and so happy that it did get that recognition. It really
When did it come out?
came out. It's going to be about a year that it's been out. Yeah.
And it's available on Amazon.
It's available on Amazon, yes.
It's called Dressing for Dreamtime.
Dreamtime.
When I just saw the picture of the cover of the book, I was very impressed with the artwork. Very unusual alligators on the front.
They are not alligators.
Oh, what are they?
They're monitor lizards.
Oh, those are the dangerous ones, aren't they?
They're pretty darn big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have these spots on them?
They do. They have all different markings, and actually that's what the book is all about. They want to get dressed for the Dreamtime ceremony, and they don't particularly care for the way they look. So they think, we'll make it better. And therein lies the plot, is they really didn't make it better.
They put on makeup or something?
They tried to paint each other different looks, and they come to find out that being themselves is the best way to look. And therein lies the moral to the story.
Yeah. And there's a lot of pictures in your book.
Yeah. In the back of that book, I created a huge glossary in the back of that book. Yeah.
I thought that they were part of the book.
They're part of the book in terms of the creatures in the story themselves. There's real information about those creatures in the glossary. But in addition to those creatures that are in the story, there are additional.
I see. So about halfway into the book, there's pictures of the goanna lizard.
That's it. Right. There's a whole lot of information in the back of the book about Australia itself. Yeah, you have a great story. It has a wonderful moral about be yourself. And in the back of the book, you get an education on Australia's wildlife. That's basically the whole idea.
This is Mike Roth and Dr. Craig Curtis. We're talking about Alzheimer's disease. What is the diagnostic process to split the difference between someone who has Alzheimer's and someone who has a different form of dementia?
That's a great question, Mike. So Alzheimer's disease in the past was a clinical diagnosis. And we would talk to the patient and the family, and they would tell us about this progressive memory loss and maybe other symptoms that had been occurring over the past 3 to 5 years. And we would simply test their memory and maybe wait another year or two and retest their memory to look for decline. Nowadays, it's completely different. As a matter of fact, now our diagnostic process involves actually looking for amyloid in the brain, which we now know causes Alzheimer's disease.
How do you see amyloid in the brain?
We can see amyloid in the brain using PET scans, which is the most common way. And now we're working on using blood tests, which are going to be coming out in the next few years. In fact, there's already one blood test that is FDA cleared to detect amyloid in the blood, which is reflecting amyloid in the brain.
And that would be the differential between another type of dementia, and Alzheimer's.
Yes, sir.
With over 20 years of experience studying brain health, Dr. Curtis's goal is to educate the Villages community on how to live a longer, healthier life. To learn more, visit his website, craigcurtismd.com, or call 352-500-5252 to attend a free seminar.
So I'm back with Jeanne Rogers. Yeah. So what is a billabong?
A billabong is a pond of water that's very still. It's just a body of water.
Okay, it's not like an animal.
No.
I was
No.
staring at the picture looking for the animal. Couldn't see it.
Yeah.
And then the other one here is the
Bab tree.
There's no boab tree.
Right. That's a tree that it keeps water within its trunk. So during the dry season, it will sustain itself. Oh.
That tree had a pretty good idea. Some trees around here should be doing that. Okay. And then you have the platypus. I would always call that the duck-billed platypus.
Yes, that's probably one of the weirdest animals in the world. There's only 2 animals that are monotremes. He's one of them, and the echidna's the other.
That are what?
Monotremes. It's a mammal that lays eggs.
Okay.
There's 2 of them, the platypus and the echidna. They're both native to down there.
Some people have never heard of an echidna, including me. What is that?
Echidna looks like a tiny porcupine with a little snout of a nose. The little guy's got this really long tongue in there, and they eat ants. So the little tongue goes out, and they go into the termite mounds and whatnot, and that's how they get their meal.
Okay, so it's just like a small anteater.
It sure is.
Okay. Probably could use it all around here. Maybe they like those red spicy ants.
Yeah, no, that's not good.
Not good for them?
Not good for them.
Okay, that's good. And do you bring out about one book a year?
No, I don't attempt to do anything on a deadline. I really don't. Yeah, I would rather it come from my head, get down on paper, and as long as it takes, that's exactly what it's going to be. Yeah, no deadlines.
So your production process for a book, after you put pen to paper or you use a computer, what do you do after you have the...
If they meet my approval as the author, I get an editor. And right now I have an absolutely wonderful editor. She's working on my current book, which is called The Last Heir. And that will come out hopefully sometime around Christmas. Yeah, you've got to get it to an editor. You've got to have a good editor. Yeah. And not be afraid of when they tell you that chapter doesn't work, throw it out. Yeah, you have to have a good editor.
And you pay for that.
And you pay for that. Yes. Yeah.
Have you ever been angry at what the editor said to you?
Never. Never. If I'm going to pay somebody for their expertise, then I better well be to taking their suggestions, criticisms, and comments, whatever they may be.
Now, are all of your books self-published?
They're all self-published, yes.
Are they ever available in the Barnes & Noble section for Villages authors?
They are. They are. They've been there a couple of times. I've also spoken at Barnes about the books to the general public and also members of the Writers League. I'm currently the president of the Writers League of the Villages. I spend a lot of time up there. We'll be up there tomorrow, November 2nd.
Okay. Sit update or do anything?
Don't do anything.
No, it's good. They have that big event up at Brownwood. Not Brownwood, but the Polo Field.
Oh, they're having something at the Polo Field tomorrow?
Oh, yes.
Oh dear.
Well, it seemed like 100 vendors of all different sorts.
It's a craft fair up there.
All kinds of people up there.
So we've got competition.
Whips. Still will be competition. Here at the Villages, there's always help.
You'd be surprised how many people show up for these book displays where the authors talk about their books and what they're doing.
So how is that advertised? Is it advertised in the Daily Sun?
Yeah, it is. Just like our book expo, which happens once a year, which is in January, the last Sunday in January. That's heavily advertised in the Daily Sun and in other places as well.
So, since you're writing children's books, and I know some other authors in the Villages Writers League do children's books, why don't you do a sale of books for the holidays as gifts?
That would be no problem. I think the biggest problem is finding a place to do it and actually organizing everybody to get together. You would have to reserve a room, and then you'd have to advertise it. It's not a simple task. It's pretty hard.
Reserving room's not that hard in the Villages. If you're a lifestyle club,
you can get a room.
You're allowed 4 changes a year, and adding an extra meeting, if you would, for a book fair for children. for the holidays would not be a problem.
Not a bad idea. I'll look into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can pick a rec center further south or further north or in the middle.
That's a great idea. I'll look into that.
I've been accused of that sometimes.
Having good ideas?
Having great ideas, yeah. Sometimes they actually work out. In your process of writing, or about the writers, like, what would you like to tell our listeners?
For the process of writing, if they are writers or aspiring writers, my advice is just get it down on paper. Don't dawdle with it. Whatever method you use to write, it's okay. You don't have to follow a particular method. Just put it down on paper and then find a good editor that will help you tie the pieces together and make it look good. That's the best advice I can give. Write from your heart, too. Find something that you really want to write about that isn't inspire you, because that inspiration will overflow into the writing. Send the right message to the reader.
Now, I'm going to ask you a funny question.
Okay.
Let's pretend today you could take all the knowledge you had and you were going to talk to the Jeanne who was 25 years of age, go backwards in time. What message or messages would you give her?
I would probably tell her to be more about the writing. At the time that I started writing, I was actually working and had children. I could not put the time in. I think the message is that if you're going to start writing, you got to get somewhat serious, especially if you're hoping to publish a book. You can't just do one chapter here and then 2 months from now do another chapter. It's got to be a dedicated, fire in the belly type deal. Otherwise, you'll never get it done.
We have a member of the improv club who has been working on a book for a while. And she told everyone, I'm taking a month off to write my book, finish writing my book. And she essentially moved to a hotel in Orlando, cut herself off from all the people and activities here in the villages, and managed to finish her book.
Wow. You know that this month is NaNoWriMo.
I don't know what NaNoWriMo means.
It's National Novel Writing Month.
Oh, really?
And I just came from a meeting with other authors. We sat around a table at Panera talking about and discussing NaNoWriMo, what our aspirations were, what our goals were, 500 words a day, 1,000 words a day. The whole idea is to write a novel in the month of November. That's really a big goal. But if you do get started, if you're inspired by the people around you, because that's really what the name of the game was. When we were sitting there today talking, I said to everybody, the whole idea is inspiration. If you get inspired by the people around you, then you'll go home and you write that story. Got an idea in your head? Put it down on paper.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Otherwise, it'd never get done.
Now, if I was going to sit down and write a novel or another book I'm thinking about writing, but probably will never get beyond the outline that I wrote 7 years ago, is I would feed it into an AI and ask the AI to flesh it out in my voice, having let the AI read what I've written in the past.
Okay.
And then do a heavy edit job on when I get back from the AI as a start.
I don't know how I feel about AI at this point. I will tell you this, that for the book that's coming out soon, which is the third middle grade novel that I'm writing, I've written it. It's now with the editor. I have used AI to help me envision some of the scenes in the book, but I have sent those ink drawings. That's what I asked them to create, an ink, black and white ink drawing, to my illustrator. I says, this is what I'm thinking in my head. Take this and create a sketch for me. I don't want to use AI in total. I like the human touch. I know that everybody's using AI at this point. It's like a deal. I don't know. But
I asked it to recreate the logo for my podcast, Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. And
that's what you got.
That's what I got. It's so much better than the business card idea I had originally. And then recently, because I'm teaching the AI course at the Enrichment Academy, I said, what's wrong with that logo? It's in the wrong aspect ratio. It's square. And everyone's using these 16:9 screens or wider. And so I asked a different AI to take the drawing that I have now and provide the left and right background that's missing.
Oh, okay.
And it came out perfect.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
The book that you're holding, Dressing for Dreamtime, everything was created by a human being. Everything that I've created, the books that you see on the table, I used a human being to create those illustrations.
This Dressing for Dreamtime illustration on the cover is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's eye-catching.
It is.
Hold it far enough away, and it looks like the human eye with the iris. Okay?
Yeah.
The artist that did that for you did a great job.
She is pretty fantastic.
On the other side of the coin, AI is doing some pretty fantastic.
I know, because I've used it. I have used it. I've had it create all kinds of symbolic little pieces for me. I understand it and I get it.
Which one do you use?
ChatGPT I use for some informational stuff. I'm using Bing Copilot.
Microsoft provided a lot of the funding for OpenAI to create its large language models, and then has taken their best work in OpenAI, ChatGPT 4.0, not 0, and expanded it for the use in Microsoft products, which is pretty much fantastic. And it'll only get better. AI changes every day.
Yeah, it's powerful. There's no two ways about that.
Right.
Our next general meeting of the Writers League will highlight AI.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks a lot for being with us, Jeanne.
Thank you.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Now, if people want to get copies of your book, how do they do that? They can get them at Barnes & Noble?
They can get them at Barnes & Noble. We'll order them for them. Absolutely. All they have to do is ask, because they are available on Barnes as well.
Mhm.
If you went into the store and asked for a copy of Dressing for Dreamtime, they'll order it for you.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
any of my other books, too.
Okay, and you can find them on Amazon.com?
Definitely on Amazon.com.
Great. Are any of the books converted to audiobooks?
Not yet. I would love to get some of these children's books onto audio, but that's another step.
Yeah, that's another step. Great. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much for having me.
Remember, our next episode will be released next Friday at 9 a.m. Should you want to become a major supporter of the show or have questions, please contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. This is a shout-out for supporters: Tweet Coleman, Ed Williams, Duane Romick, Paul Sorgen, Kathy Loving, and Dr. Craig Curtis at K2 in the Villages. We will be hearing more from Dr. Curtis with short Alzheimer's tips each week. If you know someone who should be on the show, contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. We thank everyone for listening to the show. The content of the show is copyrighted by Roth Voice 2024. All rights reserved.